Welcome back. On your do now, I wanted you to think about when is it okay to go to war? What sort of lines need to be crossed for you to say, yes, let's go to war, let's do this, it's worth it? And everyone has a different answer to this. But this is one of our big questions for this class because America's going to face this decision a lot. When do you go to war? When is it okay to say, no, it's time to start killing people and put an end to something? Um, What does it take for you? Do you have to be attacked first? Are you okay with it being the one who attacks first? Is there certain human rights violations? Um, we're going to try and figure that out. It's not an easy question to answer. Yesterday, we were talking about this idea of containment. And that's one of America's goals during this Cold War is to try and contain communism, contain the Soviet Union. So some reminders of what this is about is that the U.S. is not going to start a war with the Soviet Union. Right? They're not going to attack first. They're not looking to start World War III. But they're also not going to back down and let communism take over the world. Right? They still want to be tough and stand up for people, but they don't want to actually fight the Soviet Union because they know it's going to cause World War III and it's going to cause all these problems. So what the policy is to contain it is to keep it where it is. Anytime communism starts to spread, America is going to step up and try and stop it. So if communism tries to spread to one small little city like Berlin, America is going to step up. If there's an invasion of Western Europe, America is going to step up. If the Soviet Union starts to spread and conquer into the Middle East, the U.S. wants to step up. Right? So they're not going to attack the Soviet Union. Keep it where it is. Just don't let it spread. There's this belief that communism, this evil government, will eventually kill itself. Right? You can't do this forever. It's not a good system to oppress your people, take away their rights, live in poverty. That won't last forever. Right? So America thinks if they just stop communism from spreading, it'll eventually kill itself. And you can avoid World War III. Remember, there's this fear of the domino theory that once communism starts to spread, it's not going to stop. It's easier to stop that first domino from falling than trying to catch it as they're going. Once they start going, it's hard to stop it. All right, so America's going to step up and draw a line and say, this is where communism is. We're not going to let it spread any further. So here's a map of the world. During the Cold War, you can see here's the Soviet Union, plus the countries they had essentially conquered and forced into communism. Here's the United States and the countries on our side. What America basically says is, let's draw a line around where communism is, and that's as far as it gets. We don't want it to go any further. We definitely don't want any of these blue countries switching sides, and we don't want any of these gray countries to go to the red side either. Right? So keep it where it is. And that sounds good, right? We avoid World War III, and eventually communism kills itself. Problem is, this is really hard because the Soviet Union wants to expand. They're constantly going to be pushing not just around their borders, but trying to get countries all around the world to switch sides. So America is basically on alert constantly saying we will defend the entire world against communism. That's really hard to do. And that puts you in a position to have to go fight wars all around the world. And the first time this is going to really break out to war is going to be in Korea. So real quick, after World War II, Korea is going to be split in half. The Soviet Union is going to rebuild the North. America is going to rebuild the South. Right, so the North becomes communist, the South becomes capitalist like us, and just like the U.S. and the Soviet Union, North and South Korea do not like each other. They don't get along. But again, not a big deal to the United States because the goal was always to put them back together. Eventually, North and South Korea would be reunited. Well, when the time came to reunite them, the Soviet Union, North Korea basically said, no, we're not doing that. Some other major events happened in this time. China fell to the communist. The Chinese army lost a civil war, became communist. This is a big problem for the United States. One of the biggest countries in the world just switched sides. They went from being an American ally to being an American enemy. Right? So they lost their biggest ally. This was a huge blow to America. This was very early in the Cold War. Right? So now America's sit there thinking, we can't lose any more countries in Asia. If we do, those dominoes are going to start falling. We can't stop it. So America starts putting up Japan. Japan's our big focus now. They're going to be our big ally. We can't give up an inch of ground. Um, and that's first going to be tested in Korea. Eventually leads to the Korean War, which is going to go from 1950 to 1953. So here's a map of Asia. You can see China here, very large country, lots of people. This was an American ally during World War II, and we saw it as a very important ally to fight against the Soviet Union. Right? If World War III broke out, it'd be very important to have this country on our side. Well, they fought a civil war, and they went communist. America did not help much in this civil war. Right? A lot of people saw America's inaction as a big failure, and they watched the Chinese government fall and our allies fall and become communist. Here we can see North and South Korea, and here's Japan. You can see how close all these countries are. There's a lot of blue countries on this map. Now, it's mostly red, but there are some blue. And America is committed to keeping these blue, keeping them on our side during this war. We have to contain it. Don't let communism spread any more than it already is. If we zoom in on North and South Korea, here's the line how it's divided after World War II. The Soviets rebuild this, America rebuilds this. Again, the goal is to put them back together. When the time comes, the North refuses. And what the North does, not long after, is they're going to attack South Korea. The communists will invade, and they are going to be very successful early on, and they conquer all the way down to this little corner. They're this close to conquering all of Korea before the United States finally says, all right, that's it, we're going. We can't let another country, another ally fall to communism, because the next domino to fall is going to be Japan. We can't let that happen. So America gets involved. They come back. They push all the way up to this blue line to the point where they've almost conquered all of North Korea. And that's when China gets involved. China starts to invade, and they push all the way back down to this dotted line. Then America fights back one more time, and they end up drawing a line on this blue one. This is where they kind of tie. And they call a ceasefire. They say, all right, this war's been going on long enough. Let's just take a pause. And that's how it ended. They never signed a peace treaty. They never came to a deal. They're just sort of on this sort of timeout. Right? They're on a pause. So in theory, this war could start up again at any time. North and South Korea do not get along. They do not like each other. They're ready for war at any moment. And there's a lot of conflict and problems in this area. North Korea is really struggling in poverty, yet very aggressive and willing to go fight wars. We're going to watch a couple videos as a class. When we're done with that, we're going to be answering some, or do a reading and then answering questions based on different levels.